Hey everybody, my name is Dr. Brett Brimhall. I'm a chiropractor and live here in the Phoenix area. I'm excited to spend a little bit of time with you to talk about children's health. The last couple of weeks, have been part of a worldwide summit on children's health and how do we raise and nourish our children. So one of the biggest responsibilities I've had in my life is to take care of and raise four kids. My wife and I have kids ranging from their mid 20s, 23 turns this week, all the way down to getting ready to start his freshman year in high school. Just had our third daughter graduate. So my whole life and practice, I spent years and years trying to help my own children be healthy, and also many others. I'm treating now some children that are the fourth generation of the families my dad and I have treated. So what I want to do is spend some time with you today and talk about specific things that children face and things that you can do to help your own family be as healthy as possible, physically, emotionally, and so you can hopefully, number one, help them get better when they're struggling and avoid things that are possible. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to focus on children's health today. So let me share the screen with you, and we'll get rolling. Like I said before, with having four kids, my biggest concern and responsibility has been raising them, and to make sure that they're okay. And there's different things that seem to have happened over the course of their life that I wish I would have known ahead of time. So we make the mistakes with our first. I would tell my oldest son, I said, you're kind of like the burnt pancake. And we had to learn some of the things in life through him, and didn't got better with the last one. So, but there's some common things that show up in children's health that I truly think if you can apply these principles can have a drastic impact on their health, but also the health of the next generation. We should be getting healthier and healthier each generation. So we can, in order to do that, we have to take personal responsibility. We can't blame it on anybody, right? Love this little cartoon, but taking personal responsibility for what you can control is absolutely critical. There are a lot of things that are outside of our control, so we want to focus on the things that we can control. This is the core philosophy. Hippocrates taught about it years and years ago, and I agree 100%. But the natural healing force within each of us is the greatest force of getting well. And that comes back to understanding your body is designed to get well. And this, from no matter how big you are or how little you are, there's a natural innate ability for your body to heal and repair. We just need to understand how to get out of its way and give it the things that it needs in order to have that. So here's what I believe. Health truly is this. It's a condition in which all functions of the body and mind are normally active. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, or social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. Unfortunately, in the United States, a lot of the focus is put on not having symptoms, as opposed to what is optimal health. Well, I want to open it up to that. Like, I want optimal health. I don't want my kids just to get through school. I want to have success in school. And success to me is not a grade point average. Success is them having a good experience, learning how to handle difficult things, and being ready for the next phase of life. Because what I know is that someday I may not be around. And I want to do everything I can to give them the tools, the resources, and the confidence to be able to be successful in life, which is a lot of time, sometimes getting through the day or helping other people out. So I want you to ask yourself, how well are you? How well are your kids? Do they have symptoms? Is there a disease? Are you in optimal function, or are you just getting by? We are going to focus on optimal function, and that's physically being well, mentally being well, and socially being well. We look, so the way you see the world dependent on the glasses you look through. What I mean by that is if you only see it one way, you're not going to see it another way. And when I practice medicine or chiropractic, and the way I see people when they walk into me and somebody comes in with any symptom whatsoever, I'm thinking through this lenses. Hey, how much, if there's a physical component to it, that's the structure. Is there an electromagnetic component to it, which has to do with Wi-Fi and all the other things around us? Is there a component where there's toxins in the environment or they're getting in? Or is there a nutritional component? Is there an emotional component? Are there allergies and sensitivities? So as a chiropractor, also trained in nutrition and formulation, and also trained in the psychology, like I'm looking at things very broadly, and also in acupuncture to understand like what's the true cause of the problem and what is the solution. To boil that down, I keep it super simple. I want to remove any obstacles that I can and enhance or give the body what it needs to handle the stresses that it's up against. Because truly, health is like a budget, just like you have a financial budget. If you spend more than you make, you're going to be in deficit and your body has to go in conservation mode. We don't want that. We want your body in a constant healing state. So just to kind of give you a snapshot, here's some of the stress. All stress the body views as stress, whether it's in different categories, whether it's from electromagnetic stress, toxic stress, physical stress from athletics or birth trauma or just falls, emotional stress, maybe some that you've caused or others have been around you that caused, allergies or sensitivities, and then nutrition, which is diet, lifestyle, vitamins, minerals, things that you're taking. So here's a statistic that may scare you a little bit. A study of 536 infants conducted by the National Safety Council discovered that 255 or 47% had fallen from a high place during the first year of life. This can occur simply by leaving an infant unattended while at a change table, couch, or bed. Like, all of those are injuries that can down the road cause other problems. And if there's a physical cause to the problem, I want to look for a physical solution. Here's another study. 1990 study from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission revealed that almost 250,000 children under the age of 15 were treated from injuries related to playground equipment. The most of these results actually were falls, with approximately 50% resulting in head and neck trauma. Bottom line is, every single person on the planet that had to learn how to walk, they fell, and that's going to cause physical injuries or traumas to your body that, if left unchecked, can cause symptoms and lead to dysfunction, and if left unchecked long enough, can lead to disease. So again, going back to this concept that we're talking about whole body health. All right. So people always ask, well, do you adjust kids? The answer is absolutely. So do children need chiropractic? In my world, yes. I remember growing up and referring people, my friends and friends' family, to my dad, who was a chiropractor. I thought everybody saw a chiropractor. And why is that? Well, that's just the way I grew up. So when I had a headache, or if I was feeling stressed in school, or if I wasn't sleeping well, the first thing that I did is I went to my dad to have him physically work on me. I want you to think about it this way. When you're stressed, when you're not feeling good, whether you got, the flu, or maybe you ate something bad, or you fell down, or you got injured, your body experiences life through it. And so you're going to feel physical symptoms. So why don't we do things physically to improve that? So over the last 20 plus years of my practice, I spent a lot of time looking for physical things that we could do to enhance how the body functions. Because bottom line, when the body is relaxed and calm, it's in a healing state. When it's not relaxed and calm, it's in a non-healing state. So here's just some of the things that people may think about, and maybe wouldn't think about a chiropractor, right? But maybe, hey, you might think, hey, well, if I saw the head tilt to one side, maybe you think a chiropractor. Well, what about sleeping problems? What about, a shoulder flared up, or they're walking, you can tell, with like bow leg, or maybe they have symptoms, they have a hard time focusing, or they're just clumsy, or their bones are noisy, they pop and click a lot. They may be a colicky baby. And all of these things, whether it's ear infections or headaches, bedwetting, growing pains, upset stomach, these can all relate to things that can be addressed through chiropractic or through chiropractic type lifestyle, or think of it as a holistic type lifestyle. Whether you're talking about physical therapy, chiropractic, acupuncture, it's understanding what is the body showing you. So I want you to learn. The thing about kids, they don't know how to tell us the way we hear. So you got to listen and say, okay, if they're not sleeping well, or if they're not happy, or they're sick, like, that's the body's expression that there's something going on. We need to understand what it's saying, as opposed to just getting rid of the symptom. We understand, like, what is the cause of the symptom? What is the body trying to tell us? And this goes for adults as well. Here's an interesting concept. So let's just say that your child is struggling, and your option is, I got to take him to the doctor. No, whatever doctor you're going to go to is going to determine what type of solution they're going to possibly give you. So if you're going to go to a chiropractor, right, they're probably going to adjust them. If you're going to go to acupuncture, they probably suggest acupuncture. If you go to a nutritionist, they'll probably suggest nutrition. If you go to a pediatrician, they may suggest medications. So each one of those have their place. It's which one's right for them. So here's a study. We know that the younger somebody is, the older they are, the more susceptible they are to drug interactions and adverse drug reactions. So medications absolutely have their place. Let's just make sure we're looking at the whole puzzle as to understand what do they need most. One of the most common things I see all the time is people with headaches. So, and this is just common because we can treat this over the counter. Somebody with a headache, right? So what do? We may take an ibuprofen or a Tylenol, But my question is why do they have the headache? What causes the headache? Because you could literally have a headache because you get hit in the head playing basketball or falling down. You can have a headache because you're dehydrated. You can have a headache because you have an allergy to a food. You can have a headache because you're emotional stress. So do each one of those headaches all require a Tylenol or an Advil, or are there different solutions to that? So we don't want to cover up a symptom. We don't want to just like say, hey, it's not there. I want to understand why it's there and what can I do to allow my body to process it as opposed to just hide it. All right, going back to that study, it's so common how common headaches are in young people, like very common. So one of the most common things I'll see in teenagers when they come in is I want to, number one, ask them when the headache started, how long they've had them, and what are they currently doing about it, and look at their water intake, do physical things to help them, teach them some stress management skills to learn how to like process stress differently. And to maybe they're chewing gum a lot. A lot of time people are chewing gum a ton, and that way they're clenching their teeth all the time because it's just constantly like anytime you exercise, the muscle gets tighter, just like chewing gum, it gets tighter. Maybe they're doing too much screen time, right? And their eyes are fatiguing, and they may need nutrition for their eyes, or we may need to address how their screen is set up, whether it's too high or too low, or maybe they need blue glasses lenses to block out some of that blue light. All of these can contribute to headaches, and that goes along with every symptom that other people might be experiencing. How about this? Attention deficit or hyperactivity. Now, I'm sure I would be classified as that when I was younger because I was always busy. Like I could hold still, but I was always busy. I struggle with reading, right? And so it's important to make sure that we're addressing the cause of the problem. So ADD, ADHD, this affects a ton of people, and it drastically impacts not only their ability to sit still, but to perform well in school. And not all kids learn the same way. And you combine that with added stress like we live in the world in right now, they're going to have a hard time focusing. They might deal with more anxiousness. Well, if this is your child, there's a great book out there by Dr. Daniel Amen, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And he has one on ADD and ADHD. And he talks about there's multiple types of ADD or ADHD, and understanding that even though somebody has similar symptoms like not holding still or hard time focusing, risky behavior, it doesn't mean that the same treatment will be needed for every single one of those. And talks about that a lot. As you know, a lot of medications that are giving for children with ADD or even adults are stimulant type medications, which seems kind of interesting, but literally when somebody has a hard time focusing, usually their brain is going slower, not faster. It sounds opposite, but when your brain is working optimally, it can slow things down, as opposed to that's why these people will move a lot, because as they move, like it wakes the brain up and then they can control their focus better. So it's super important to make sure that we address the right cause, because if we don't address just think of it as a brain that's not functioning optimally. Well, that'll give them a symptom, whether that's feeling anxious or nervous or hypervigilant or acting out. And that can lead to behavior outbreaks, which can lead to being labeled, which can lead to the person not feeling confident about who they are. And that leads down the road to where they underperform in society based upon what they could if they only knew. And a lot of this relates to just understanding what is the person trying to tell you? What do they need? It could be that their blood sugar is off. It could be they're eating food allergies. It could be that they're eating food dyes that literally can make somebody appear ADD. My own son, like it's funny, when he ate sugar, man, he was just off the rocker. So you have to identify what the cause is, and there's different tests that can be done, whether your food allergy test or even brain scans, what's called SPECT scan. You can see it. But the bottom line is you got to understand, just like your computer, it needs certain things, so does the body. So here's a couple other things that I think are pretty interesting. Is now believed that ADD is different rather than a deficit is a difference rather than a deficit disorder. It's in brain chemistry resulting in a difference in approaching to learning. Fewer than 5% have symptoms or neurological damage. It's thought to be a decreased activity or stimulation of the upper brain functions. And some of the causes for this are toxic exposure, infections, drug exposure, head injuries, and environmental factors. So all of these are the causes. So are we addressing the causes? So if somebody had a head injury, why don't we address the head and how it moves in the neck? Or maybe it is toxic exposure to environmental things that are in their house. We need to identify those. or other things that are in their environments that we don't even know about. Food allergies is a very, very common one. All right, here's some of the treatments that are typically common. They'll use some type of stimulant drug, like I mentioned, maybe counseling, but those have specific side effects. And it's very common that they'll have sleep disturbances, depression, sadness. Many of them will not eat because the medications make them not hungry, and then it leads to other problems down the road. When it comes to brain and brain function, nutritionally speaking, the brain is made up of a ton of fat. If you don't give it enough fats, like essential fatty acids, which a lot of people's diets are super high in carbohydrates, low in proteins, and low in good essential fats, the brain is not going to perform well. And if you don't have the right vitamins, minerals, and activating nutrients, your brain has a hard time focusing. Think about the last time you went a long time without eating and how your own brain felt, much less somebody that's a developing brain like a child. So here's a little different way of looking at it that I like to do with anybody, with kids. We call it more of a functional approach. So some of the things I look for, and you can look at this in your own kids, what's called a adrenal pupil response. So if the person in a fatigue state, they're not going to do as well. You really shine a light in their eye, and the pupil should constrict and hold between 5 and 10 seconds. Not a super bright light, but just bright enough to where you can see it hold. It should hold for 5 to 10 seconds. If it does not hold, then that's an indication that the muscles fatiguing that hold that constriction in the eyes, that can relate to adrenal fatigue. A postural blood pressure. You literally can take somebody's blood pressure laying down, have them stand up, and the blood pressure should raise 10 points. If it does not, that's the systolic, the top number. If it does not, that can be another indication of adrenal type fatigue. When the body's in a fatigue state, it's not going to get well. And so we need to be addressed that. Blood sugar, big things. Your body is designed to keep the blood sugar in a very optimal range. If it does not, it will not perform well. And when that happens, the brain's not going to work well. They're not going to have good energy. They're not going to sleep good. You can look at pH. You can test for zinc. You can have them perform different tasks. One thing that we'll do with muscle testing, maybe we'll show a video at some point in time on that, some of the things I've done there, just how we go through an evaluation of that. So if that stuff interests you, just shoot me a message and we'll figure that out. Here's another thing, fevers. Little kids with fevers all the time. I get this from moms, and this is true. I remember as I had my first little one, me and my wife and I had our first one, like everything was new. And so how high a fever is too high? So typically 98.6 is the normal range. It can range from 96 to 100. And with hard exercise, your blood pressure, your temperature is going to go up. And when somebody has a fever, right, one of the things we have to ask is, why does the body have a fever? And sometimes it's because it's dealing with an infection. And sometimes with little kids, you'll see it all the time when they're teething. So one of the things that happened, why the body had a fever, especially when they're teething, the body is mobilizing calcium, because calcium is needed for the white blood cells to do their job. So one of the things that I like to do with young kids when they're having fevers, or especially and when they get into like that younger, like 6, 7, 8, and then again in teenage years, they start having like leg pains, is I start giving the right type of calcium, magnesium, and boron, because that time their body needs that. So the first thing I do with a child has a fever, I just have them take a little extra calcium. And by doing that, like you're literally, a lot of the fevers will drop automatically. Now, the fever is not bad in of itself, but if it stays too high too long, that's where they can start getting seizures. So watch that. You don't want it to, if it goes high and then drops back down, that's fine. If it stays really high, go in and consult with your physician and make sure that it's not staying too high all the time. We don't want it to get so high they create seizures. So one of the things that I'll do with kids, I always start thinking when they start having those fever, are they cutting teeth? Or if they have been on somebody sick, then I'm going to do things to support their immune system. And then I'm going to give them the right type of calcium. And so the reason why I talk about digestion is that 2/3 of your immune system, all of us, lives in the gut. So if the gut is unhealthy, people will get recurrent infections all the time. And I'll talk about in a minute of things, what you can do with that. Again, we don't want the fever to go so high. And there are times it's appropriate to use some over-the-counter ibuprofen or something like that to drop it. But you just want to make sure that your physician helps you with that. All right. Kind of talked about this. But a fever, like, you shouldn't get them all the time, and they shouldn't be suppressed all the time. The body's having a fever for a reason, but why? That's the discovery, and go back to why it happened. And I've seen it also with kids with have mold exposure. I see fevers kind of come high and stay high. And I've seen it with environmental exposure to toxins too. So really important to make sure you check the environment that can be contributing to that. Like I said, we don't want the seizures. That's when you get too low blood calcium, which goes back to making sure that I give them the right type of calcium. And people ask, well, can you give calcium to kids? Yeah. So if it's a baby that's nursing, we'll obviously give mom the nutrition, make sure mom's getting enough of the vitamins that they need so it can transfer the baby. If they're formula fed, there are good type of supplements you can add to those formulas that allow the baby to get more of what they need. And if they're younger kids and they go, how do I get a kid to swallow a pill? We don't have to get them to swallow pills. As long as they're high quality, you can like capsules or tablets, crush them up and put them in like applesauce, or if they're fine with dairy, you do some yogurts, or even in food, like just put that in there. Or smoothies is one of the things I use a lot. I have them put good high quality protein in there, good natural fruit, and then I just mix it up in there and they drink that. All right, vaccinations. I'm going to talk on this topic, and this is a very sensitive, not such sensitive, but personal is what I'm saying. So when your body has an infection, it needs to make a copy of it. And the next time it sees that infection again, it knows how to handle it, right? So your body's job is always to recognize infections, identify it, tag it, make a copy of it. So when it sees it the next time, it responds appropriately. Because you can have a inappropriate response, too high or too low, that can cause problems. So the idea behind a vaccination is just that, is to give the body a weakened state of the infection, whatever it might be, so the body can make a copy of it. So when it sees the real life thing, it can handle it differently. So here's my personal take on vaccination. I want you to do your research. There's some really great websites that I'll give you some links here below. This is just personally, none of my kids and I have been vaccinated. All right. My oldest son, when he decided to serve a church mission, in order to have the option to go foreign, he got a couple of the vaccinations. That was his choice. So if I personally was going to get vaccinated or have somebody else get vaccinated, number one, I want to prepare their body to be in a good, healthy state when they got the shot, that their body responds appropriately. That's if you're going to get the vaccination. If your body's in a weakened state, I don't want it getting vaccinated at that time, because your immune system's supposed to be able to tag things as foreign. And if they're already in a weakened state, it's a problem. Personally, myself, if I'm going to get exposed to the virus, I want to make sure that it comes in whatever form it normally does. So when with the vaccination, most of them are shots, right? So you're bypassing multiple types of the immune system. Typically, when we're exposed to any type of bacteria or virus, it's going to be through inhaling it, or breathing it in, like I said, breathing it in, or eating it, or it's going to come through our mucous membranes. Now, as that happens, your body has multiple barriers of immune system on those mucous membranes to start the process of identifying if it's a good or bad thing. And I personally would rather have exposure that way for myself, so my body has all the different components in place to identify and handle the infection like it's supposed to. Now, when the shot is done because it's a convenient, super easy thing to do, and you don't get some of the side effects you'll get with a lot of people. Like if you're exposed to an allergy, right, or an infection, you don't feel good. You get all that the mucus and the sneezing and the coughing. And so to bypass some of that, that's why the shot. And it's also a very even dose. Now, the problem is what if the body, number one, the goal of the vaccine is to have a copy. So for a vaccination to be effective, it needs to be able to create an immunity to whatever it is you want to be immune from. And so for me personally, if my children are vaccinated, I make sure their immune system is really healthy. I have a combination of nutrients I make sure that they're taking for a minimum of 2 weeks before they get anything, if they were going to do that. And then I want to have it be toxin-free shot, right, which will no mercury, or Thermosil, which is a common thing put in some of the vaccines. I don't want that personally in my body. And I'm going to make sure that it's one at a time. I've never seen people get multiple infections at a time in a natural course. It just does not happen very often, right? So how often are you going to be exposed to like measles, mumps, and rubella all in the same week, let alone the same day? Now, they're typically put together because it's just easy and convenient, but you've got to make that decision for yourself. Bottom line, if you're going to get the shot or any shots whatsoever, make sure your immune system's in a really good, healthy state before you have it happen. If you're living in an environment such where there's a lot of possibility of seeing those infections, whether they are measles, mumps, rubella, smallpox, whatever it might be, a vaccination might be the right way to go. Just make sure your immune system is in a good, healthy state when you get the shot, and then take nutrition afterwards to allow your body to make the copy like it's supposed to. If you're likely to be exposed to any of those type of things, then that's got to be a personal decision for you and for your family. If you have further questions, just shoot me a message. There's some really good books out there, but you got to make that decision for your best. It needs to be individual. What I mean by that is there are some people, and I think it's my next slide, times you shouldn't vaccinate. If your child is sick, if the child has like some type of progressive neurological disease, so for instance, they've had an autoimmune response, then it's possible they're gonna have a flare up. So let's really consult with your physician on that. Make sure you do your homework to make sure that you don't want to have somebody that's susceptible to that problem. So there's actually susceptible genes, or people with certain genomics that are more susceptible to reactions. There's some tests that can be done out there called pharmacogenetics, which allows you to test for reactions you could have to medications. Talk to your physician on that. So if you're worried or concerned about that, maybe something to consider. All right. So here's another, ear infections are a very common thing. I see it in a lot of kids. So here's a book, author, Child Ear Infection, What Every Parent and Physician Should Know. He basically summarized a couple of things here. He says, many studies by saying that children with recurrent ear infections, or excuse me, earaches often improve simply by switching to a whole food diet and eliminating junk food. So, and I'm 100% agreeable with this. Like when a child has multiple ear infections and it's just nonstop, we got to understand like, why is that? And so I'm going to go back to looking at what are this child being fed and what's the environment that they live in. Maybe they're living in a really dusty environment, or maybe for whatever reason they're swimming a lot in like a pool that's not real clean, or maybe they're eating a lot of junk food and a lot of sugar, a lot of carbohydrates. And by doing that, you're literally going to suppress the immune system. One of the common things you'll see happen is that the more mucus somebody is producing, the more infections can live there. And what I mean by that is mucus is mostly carbohydrates or sugar. So think about the things that you eat that causes mucus production in you. That's dairy, that's sugar, that's carbohydrates, that's juices. So when anybody in my family is sick, or the people I work with, I said, look, number one, you got to cut all that out and increase your water a ton, because I want to get the mucus down so that the infections can't continue to grow. And by doing that, you're going to flush a lot of that out so the bacteria can't continue to grow. And typically that's what we put in our mouth. There are some situations not that, but the majority of the time it is. So from my standpoint, with ear infections or pressure in the ears, whether that's swimmer's ear, which I see a lot here, is get the ear to drain. All right. And so think about the ear canals here. So the babies, younger kids, their ears canal are more kind of horizontal. As our heads change, they get more kind of inclined like this. They're going to drain easier. So I want to make sure I can get that drainage open. And remember, all of the ears literally drain in the back of the throat. So if you have somebody who has like a lot of swollen glands in here, it's not going to drain on the inside. And that swelling a lot of times happens because they're eating food allergies, and sugars decrease that. And many of those individuals will not have the ear infections anymore. There are times, I think in my 22 years of practice, I've had 2 kids have to have tubes that I've worked on. I've worked on hundreds of kids, because the vast majority of the time, clean up the diet, adjust them, get them doing different things dietary wise, and no more ear infections. It happens all the time. All right, a couple other things to think about with that. When I work with these kids, I'm going to adjust them, talk about the diet. If they're young little ones, then that's why I work on the mom's diet, because remember, the baby gets what the mom eats if they're nursing, which is a great way to get nutrition into them. But at the same time, if mom is super stressed out or eating a lot of like dairy or sugar or things like that that literally irritate the baby, it's going to make them worse. You'll see a lot of babies with like colic, and you change the mom's diet, and unfortunately chocolate can be one of them, and sometimes even broccoli. If that raw broccoli, some people, they just kind of get those kids churned up. From a nutritional standpoint though, the health of mom and health of dad is critical for health of child. So they develop all their habits by watching us. And so it's super critical we work on ourselves. The other thing that I look at with infections with kids is the right calciums, make sure they're taking the right probiotics and enzymes, taking the right immune support, and prebiotics, vitamin D. So if they're not getting this through diet, they have to get it somewhere. So there are different drink mixes I use all the time. And I think drink mixes are just powder. So it's very easy to get into kids. So when our kids were young, like when one child got sick, guess what would normally happen? It's going to run its course through everybody. So as soon as one person in our family started having symptoms, this rule in my house: if you're grouchy, if you're sick, you're stressed or not sleeping well, you get adjusted. Right? That's just the rule in our house. And when they're younger, that's what happened. When they're older now, they kind of ask me. And as soon as one would get sick, I then specifically put them all on certain immune support. Like there's a powder I mix together. I give it to all the kids, right? So we mix it up, in 12 ounces, and they each get a shot of it every morning, every night, to give their body what it needs in order to do what it's designed to do. Because most of the time we earn colds, we don't catch them. Most of the time we think about when you get sick, or when a lot of our kids get sick, is because they're not sleeping good, they're not eating good, they're off their schedules. And so our body's in a suppressed state. And so then it can no longer function. I'd watch this with my daughter right now. She just graduated high school. I've watched the last couple of weeks where she's just finishing projects, got dance going on. She's in student government, and she just push, and, not getting much sleep. And literally, boom, she started feeling crappy as soon as the day after graduation. So if you're watching that pattern yourself for your kids, is being proactive, go back. One of the key things I would say with all parents and all of this is think about an infant. And we all know if the infant's on a schedule, they do better, right? So which means we put them to bed at the same time, we wake up at the same time, we feed them at the same time, they get playtime and they get nap time. So if they're on that schedule, they're happier and we're happier. So think about that also true as an adult. When is the last time you had a schedule and you stuck to it? So you got sleep time, you got playtime, you nourished yourself physically and emotionally. If you didn't, and you rob Peter, pay Paul, pretty soon you run into the weather. So coming back to this ear infection with kids, like right nutrition, keep them on a schedule. There's different drink mixes I use that work really well. I like, because with kids, sometimes a little harder to get stuff down them that as an adult, I can have them swallow the right type of what's called right capsules or tablets. But as they're younger, powdered versions work the best and super easy to get it down them. If you have multiple kids, literally I just mix it up so they all get some. I have a lot of my parents that are trained to do this when they're making smoothies in the morning. They literally just make a big bunch up so that the kids get the right things in, and guess what? So does dad, because sometimes husbands are a little more, finicky about taking stuff. Not always, but a lot of times. Here's kind of an interesting study. Say 78% of children with chronic ear infections had food sensitivities. 86% of the time, infections cleared when the problem food was eliminated for a period of several months. And the infections nearly always recurred upon resumption of the former diet. So milk was by far the most frequent culprit, followed by wheat, eggs, and peanuts. So I want to speak to this just a second, because this is not, I want you to think about an allergy and an ear infection. So it's almost an overactive response to a food, right? So an allergy is an over response to a food or pollen. So that's an autoimmune. If it was like further there, we'd call it an autoimmune response. And I want you to kind of come back to this point. So we're talking about milk was by far the most, then wheat, then eggs and peanuts. So in the United States, those are the most common foods we eat. So your body can react to those things you eat the most if you have a dysfunctional digestive tract. Let's say it again. So if these are the foods you eat the most, which are typically the most common, and it's because you eat them the most, and you'll have them show up when you have a dysfunctional digestive tract. So I saw this with my own son. So he had all sorts of skin rashes and stuff like that on his face. So I knew right away he had some allergies of some kind. Well, I watched him as a little kid, a little turkey. He liked it, a little baby. He liked to go outside and play in the dog dish, right? Well, guess what's in the dog dish? Birds come play in it and dogs look at it, right? So he's eating the food. We can try to stop him all the time. He developed some GI dysfunction that manifested his skin. So I did this, and I would work with him on and off, and he got to be a little bit older and he still has some of this stuff going on. I said, look, we're going to test you, and I need a commitment from you because he's tired of his tummy hurting. I'm going to test you, and whatever shows up, we're going to pull off those foods for a minimum of 3 months. And he said, okay. So we spent a few $100, did these tests, and it came back, and guess what? He was reacting to almost everything he was eating. It's because he had a dysfunctional digestive tract, right? So when he was little, I could do a lot of things to, keep him from eating it. When he got to be a little older, like he'd go eat stuff all the time at his buddy's house and things like that. We identified him, we removed him, and I gave him specific things that, one, helped to heal the gland and the tissues that were struggling, I did specific things nutritionally to improve how his genes decreased inflammation and made energy. And we stay away from those foods for 3 months. All right. Once we did that, I knew his gut lining was healthy again. And I said, okay, now you add one food back at a time. Because I knew that one of those or two of them would probably have long-term consequences. Just like this one here says that if they went back to the original diet, the symptoms reoccur. So he could go back on all the foods but dairy, right? Now, I truly believe if you could get like raw dairy, it probably wouldn't react, but it's really tough to get that here where we live. So he's now off dairy 100%, but everything else he eats in moderation, and he does phenomenally well. And with him, once that cleaned up, he started growing really fast. This happened all the time. Kids that just they struggle, like they're not growing as fast, or they're struggling in school or focus or sleep, or having a lot of stomach problems, identify the food allergy. Now, I'm always doing the physical work on him as well, but this was the key thing for him. So if you have kids that are struggling, really look at this. All right. Antibiotics and probiotics. I want to hit this really hard because literally it happened all the time. Like I want you to think about how many of you or your children have been on antibiotics. Here's what we know is that antibiotics, even 5 to 7 days, much less 10 to 15 days, changes your gut function for up to a year. That's if you don't put the right probiotics back into it. So it damages the gut. So your digestive tract is designed to digest, assimilate, which is break stuff down and take it in, and eliminate. If it cannot do that, you will have a dysfunctional body. Your energy, your focus, your concentration, your sleep patterns, all that will be messed up. So we have to understand is that these good bacteria are what allow your body to make a lot of your vitamins that relate to your energy levels. Super common. And once the digestive tract, think of it like soil, is damaged, then things can live that aren't supposed to, like parasites and other bacteria. So it's super important that we reestablish normal gut culture after antibiotics, right? Because if we don't, you're going to always have other long-standing problems. All right, here's something I thought was very interesting. So we know that antibiotics have saved really millions of lives. Right? They have their place, absolutely. Right, glad we have them. So they saved millions of lives. But even Alexander Fleming, who developed antibiotics or discovered them, warned the overuse of the drug would lead to bacterial resistance. So what that means is that if you use antibiotics too much, the bacteria get stronger to them. So when Fleming spoke, there's no Staph aureus that had any resistance to penicillin. Now more than 95% of them have resistance to penicillin because they've been exposed to it so many times. And here's kind of a scary thing. We know human beings reproduce and cycle through a generation every 20 years or so, and bacteria only takes 20 minutes. So they learn very quickly and they adapt. So the best bet for all of us is just to help build your natural body's innate ability, because your body's ability to learn and repair to environmental changes is more effective if you give it what it needs, because it's going to handle the environment better than anything else. So antibiotics have their place, but we need to make sure we're working through and supporting your body's natural processes. Here's kind of a scary thing. Hospital brochures don't usually mention this, but the number of Americans who die each year from infections that are picked up in a hospital is greater than the number who died in the Korean War or Vietnam War, and more than 4 times the number killed in automobile accidents each year. So medications have their place. They're awesome when used appropriately. Bottom line is, make sure you're doing your part and don't expect the medicine or any physician to make up for what you will not. It's super critical that it says, physician heal thyself in the scriptures. It's critical that we learn how your body functions, apply the principles that your body functions off of, support it with what it needs, and remove the stuff that's not. Many of us eat for taste, not for health. Many of us use our body as a tool, not a friend. So I want you to think about, how do I help my child or myself understand what my body's telling me, and treat it like the best friend you ever had, that you're going to have forever, and the only one you're going to have forever, and do the things that it needs and wants. What it needs, not always what it wants. A lot of people will want something with their tongue and their digestive tract says no. So learn to listen to the inner voice of what your body truly needs, as opposed to what it thinks it wants. Okay. How about our environment? Here's a couple of really cool quotes I just love. So you can be taking one step forward by eating perfectly and exercising and following the 10 simple solutions. But if you are ingesting toxins, you are taking many giant steps backward without even knowing it. We are part of a universal experience in which we have been and continue to be subjected to hundreds of chemicals, poisons, and toxins already known to be dangerous. These substances are found in everything from baby food to mouthwash. That's a quote by Jesse Lynn Heinley, a book called Tired or Toxic. So just know if you're not familiar with some of the stuff, just start looking. But I remember reading this book, Tired of Toxin, years and years ago, and I literally was feeling like in, I would say, a depressed state, because I was thinking of all these people I've been working with for years and watching them struggle and realizing a lot of it's totally outside their control. So what the focus then became, we got to control the controllables. And a big part of that is understanding and starting to clean up your environment. There's a really cool app out there called Think Dirty. It's called Think Dirty, and you can scan your products that you have around your home and in, you know, cosmetics and whatnot, and it will rate them from a zero to a 10 of how toxic they are. So the products that I use personally in my skincare, my hair care, body care, like they're 1, 2, or 0 or less, usually a 1 or a 0, right? Because I want to eliminate the environmental exposure that I personally put in on myself, because I do know there's just things that I cannot control. So start paying attention to that. People always ask, what do I feed my kids? So our children, I've learned this across the world, like people I've treated from all over the world, like they eat what they're taught to eat, right? They learn to eat. And a lot of them, they just haven't been given different options. So here's just a sample of some of the things that we've done with our kids. Now, you try to teach them principles, then when they go away to college, guess what? They're going to do what they're going to do. But as I've watched, as they went, my own have gotten older, and opposed to telling this what you have to do, trying to help them and encourage them, listen to their body when they're struggling, try not to get too hard on them. But like I said, so what is your body telling you? What are you feeding it? Are you listening to it? Remember, the more live the food is, the more alive you will be. So the more live the food is, the more live you'll be. So try to help your family learn to eat live foods, healthy foods, as opposed to things that come in a box, a bag, or a can. The more alive it is, the more alive you'll be. And here are just some ideas, some things that you can look at. They're not perfect, but you want to start moving them in a different direction, because our kids will learn to eat what we feed them. Unfortunately, at least in the United States, it's so common that we eat based on convenience and based on taste that we don't give our body the nourishment that it needs. A lot of people are like literally eating tons of calories that are very devoid of nutrition. So here's just some ideas, but come back to that concept there. All right, here's a couple books that might be good for you to look at. They're called The Schwarzbein Principle by Diana Schwartzbein, really good. Guilt-Free Indulgence by Mark Percival. Some things are out of print, but you can find them pretty much anymore online. Declaring Our Health by John Robbins. There's a whole bunch of others, but here's just a few. Just you want to start reading some different books. Any more with like YouTube and things like that. If there's questions you guys are having specific on maybe a more like, this is like a broad topic when it comes to children's health, specific topics you want, just, you know, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'm trying to constantly always putting information out there. Find some people you resonate well with, but it should feel right in your gut. That's why I say, like, if you're hearing something that you want to hear versus what you need to hear, you want to check that. Because what I do know is the body wants to heal itself. It needs what it needs, and it doesn't need what it doesn't need. So don't give it things that it wants, give it what it needs. Just like with our kids, like my kids don't like homework, you know, they don't always like to do their chores, but it's important that they do and learn how to like listen to what their body's trying to tell them. So if you have any questions, shoot me a message. If you need a physician somewhere in your area, we train doctors all over the world, so I'll try to connect you to somebody out there. Bottom line is, guys, take responsibility for your health. I'm grateful that you're being proactive and helping you with your kids and your family to be healthy and happy. I look forward to making this world healthier every single day. Have a phenomenal day. Again, Dr. Brett Brimhall. Reach out and let's connect through Facebook or Instagram, and pop any questions you have to me. Have a great day. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing. Here's some other snack ideas, like really cool ones. And you want some things on the vaccinations, like go ahead and look these sort of things up. That's a topic that, I mean, literally, if you're really interested in that, I've got some videos that I can send over to you to watch, some different experts in the field and kind of their take on things. but do your homework, because the bottom line is, no matter whether it's a food or a vaccine or a doctor, like, you're ultimately responsible for that. And I want you to have the choice. It needs to feel right to you. I tell people the same all the time. Like, when you go see a doctor, like, why would you ever go to a doctor you don't trust? Right. So, like, why would you go? You wouldn't go to a restaurant you don't like. You wouldn't go to a movie you wouldn't like. So learn to get the information you need and trust your instincts, and get the information and make sure you make the decision based on what you feel is best for you, no matter what it is. And just surround yourself with the right people that will help support you through that, but also tell you what you need to, not only what you want to hear. All right, you guys have a phenomenal day, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future.